Hi, Corinna Sager. You are an Oscar and Emmy-nominated producer, communication strategist, coach, and professor. I'm really excited to have you on my podcast, and I'm sitting in your house. And thank you so much for being on my podcast. I look forward to a great talk with you.
Abs-
Um,
yeah.
so first, I want to ask you: could you please introduce yourself?
Well, you just already did a great job. Thanks, Marco. uh, yes. So you mentioned the Emmys. Can we go there? Is that okay? Because can I tell your audience that 1 week ago, actually, I was at the Emmys in New York City at the Emmy Award ceremony because our most recent documentary called Raising Liberty Square, which was about climate gentrification in Miami, was nominated for a documentary Emmy in the news and economics category. We didn't win, but nevertheless, we lost to Netflix, so that's also okay. And it was super, super exciting. We flew in two of the protagonists from the film, and just to be there, it was incredible. And it aired on PBS, so that was fantastic.
Congratulations on that achievement. I think that's quite impressive. Yeah, would you mind just sharing a little bit about what that movie is about?
Absolutely. I think it's actually about something that is really relevant today. It's about the word climate gentrification is actually relatively new, and not a lot of people know about it. Climate gentrification is everybody knows the word gentrification when people are pushed out of their neighborhood, but climate gentrification relates to the fact that they're being pushed out because of climate change. That in one way or another, climate change affects the situation there. And this takes place in, it's happening right now in Miami's Liberty City, which is a traditionally Black neighborhood. In fact, the place that the film is about the oldest public housing project in the South, which is Liberty Square. It's 9 city blocks. It was built in the 1930s as part of the New Deal. And, the goal was to push Black people out from Miami downtown, and they built this housing project, Liberty Square, and actually it was thriving for quite a few decades. There are there's the famous Hampton House. There's a film called One Night in Miami that takes place in the Hampton House, where Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King actually met together to talk about
Oh well.
where their future goes. And so it was really very much a historic but also thriving cultural neighborhood. But what happens in many areas is that it was built on unincorporated land, and as such, it wasn't. There was not a lot of investment put in there, and then you had, the disinvestment basically led to, unfortunately, an area that was, became less and less taken care of, and then in the 1980s, there was an what's called the McDuffie riot. What happened was that a white police officer shot a black man. Four were there, and they shot, and they were acquitted. And when the police officers were acquitted, they actually there were riots in Liberty City. And as they say in the film, the police lowered bridges. You couldn't escape, and when you can't escape where you are, then you destroy your own neighborhood, which is essentially what happened. So there's now this plan to do this real big reinvestment, and the idea is to tear it down, this public housing project, and build new housing, including supposedly affordable housing. However, what the filmmaker Katja Esson, a very good friend of mine, and who lives in Miami, found out is that it's not just about doing something good. What happens is that that area sits on a ridge, so it is 12 feet high, and sea levels are rising in Miami, where the beaches are. Who knows what's going to be there in 50 years, if there's going to be water or not? So property developers are now looking for higher ground, and there's not that much higher ground in Miami. And the higher ground is more inland because everybody wanted to be in the beaches. So now people are being pushed out because developers are building there for the future. And then, people can't necessarily afford to be there. That's what it's about. And we're following the process of that development over 4 years.
Yes, I know it was a long process and a lot of different routes, and like you had to pivot and all of that. So where can people learn more about the movie, and where is it possible to watch it somewhere? Is there a website you can refer to?
Yes, actually, it was broadcast on PBS. And because we were Emmy nominated, PBS actually opened it up for streaming again. So it's
Oh,
on
nice.
the PBS app. You can stream it for free up until July 31st. So watch it in the next month.
Oh, nice. And I'll be sure to put on in the links in the show notes so people can still have some time to go and take a look. Now, I had the pleasure to go and watch it in New York City in the cinema. It was very eye-opening documentary, and it's an area that I haven't thought about, and it was pretty powerful. So I encourage everybody to go and watch it.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
and then, yeah, I would love to, if you could take a few minutes to describe yourself in your own words. I know I mentioned what you work, strategy, communication, as a coach, as a professor, but in your word, like, what is it that you do in your job?
I think you did a good job because it's difficult. I think overall my passion is communications in general. I Everything I have ever done in my life has been about communications. I started out wanting to be an actress, but I turned into stage managing. But that part was about, you, regardless, in the theaters too, you communicate to an audience, right? I worked in television after that as a producer, and then for corporations, a lot for corporations. It's always about communicating to your audience, whether you create image films or marketing films or internal sales film or compliance films. It doesn't really matter. It's always internal. If you have meetings, even for external, internal, it's about communications. You need to get your message to a specific audience. And so that's what I've done. I've worked for some very big companies. One of them, for example, is Mediterranean Shipping Company, MSC. They're now the largest container shipping company in the world. And I'd like to think that some of my films, image films that I produced for them, contributed at least to the perception in certain ways. And um, and that is, and as you do that, I also have to deal with people. When I interview executives, when I coach them for presentations, there's the coaching aspect of that as well.
Yeah.
And so I do now. That is one thing that I really enjoy doing, and I want to do that mostly. But I also am a professor, and I've been teaching effective speaking, international communications, and producing for many, many years actually now, and I love it.
Nice. And you actually come from Germany, so can you touch a little bit about how you ended up in Montclair, New Jersey, where you live now?
Ah, that is a long journey. Well, maybe not that long, because I told you I wanted to study. I wanted to be an actress. Ideally, unfortunately, I didn't have the talent. I wanted to be a musical actress, but you need to really dance well, and
Okay.
I was not that person. Nevertheless, I did study acting in Miami, and that's also where I have my connection to Miami. And from there, it just proceeded that Miami Opera. I got an internship for a year there, but then unfortunately America no longer wanted me. So I went back to Germany and I did an apprenticeship to be a unit production manager. Basically like a stage manager for television, which was really insightful, and I enjoyed that a lot. So that was my whole experience into television, and then working for a German company as well. But because I always wanted to come back to the United States, one time I had a producer who told me that I needed to get a team in Warsaw. And I said, in Warsaw? He goes, Indiana. And
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
Indiana. Where on earth am I going to get a team in Warsaw, Indiana? I am sitting in Hamburg, Germany. But he knew I wanted to come back. So he said, well, if you were in New York, one could hire you to organize that. And that was kind of the light bulb moment where I realized, yes, I could do it as like a small production agency,
Yeah.
right? I could become that liaison. And that's what I did. A year later, I was in America. I talked to the American consulate. I figured out how to get a visa to do that, a business visa. And then that's what I started doing. And in that process, all my experiences from the past, from the theater, for meetings, all the stuff that we've done for big companies, it all kind of gelled because I understood almost anybody who called me, I understood what they wanted because I'd done it in one way or another. And then I was able to start doing it myself as a producer and a director.
Nice. One thing I want to talk a little bit more about is I know that you've been working with a lot of different people from around the world, from all continents, from all cultures, religions, backgrounds, ages. What has your experience taught you about working with a diverse set of people? Like, are there some things that stick out when you talk about diversity, collaboration across people?
The first thing is to show engagement, to be curious, and to listen. You should never come to any new country or any new team thinking that you know it all, because you don't. And I think one of the biggest concerns with anybody and any team is that there are these expectations of everybody who you're meeting. The team you're meeting that doesn't know you thinks, oh, who is she coming in, right? I'm coming in as, okay, I have to work with them now. We have a small window of opportunity to create something here, whether it's for a meeting that's maybe for a week, maybe, a few months, a shoot where you're only in for 2 days. But at the same time, that time has to be super productive. And I have to know what I do. That is key. I need to know what I do. But I also have to acknowledge that I don't know the country potentially, that I don't know what their cultural rules are necessarily in certain situations. And I have to ask questions and listen and then take the advice and think about whether that works or if there are other alternatives. And that's what I always do. I learned that from my parents. My parents were very international. My father was the CEO of a shipping company also. And we had international people all the time in our house. And I could see how the working together was. It was an exchange of ideas and that's the only way that it works. And I do it, even I teach, right? I mean, my students are in their 20s, most of them early 20s.
Yeah.
And yet I say that every semester I learn from them also. I teach them a lot. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I learn from them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking about the younger generation, and you teach them, they teach you something, you teach them something. One thing that I've noticed, and I know we have spoken about it, is how communication is different these days, especially for the younger generation. We have social media, we have AirPods, we have like phones all the time. What, in your view, what is the challenges of today's communication, and what do you think can be done about it?
One of the biggest fears that I hear from my students always about speaking in any form in public is the fear of failure, the fear of coming across as if you don't know and making mistakes. And so it's all about themselves. And what I try to teach is whatever you say is actually never about yourself. It is always about your audience. Remember, I was talking in the very beginning that everything is about an audience. Every film you make, well, if there's no audience to see it, okay, that doesn't help you much. If you have a sales meeting and you don't convince the audience that the product is fantastic and then they should go out and sell it, you're not successful. And so, but the fear is always, I look like a fool. If I stumble over a word, I don't know if, and that's completely the wrong approach, because you have to think about, well, what does the audience need to hear from you? If they're curious and interested, and how do you get them to listen? And nowadays, I think COVID played a huge role in the kids of today and the younger generation, because they were cooped up for a long time.
Yeah.
Everything is about, like you said, everything is about pods. Everything is in your world, your digital world, your social media world. There, especially, it's all about perception.
Yeah.
It's not really about the audience. You put the stuff out there just to get the likes, but it's not really that you're fulfilling a need of the audience. The need is internal,
Yeah.
right? I want to like it. And so I see that communication skills are definitely lacking. The skills of knowing how to present, how to be present physically in a
Yeah.
room, is something that they don't have, many of them, because they have never really had to do that. If you sit in your room and you focus on that, then you don't have to do that a lot. And it's very different when you're just with your buddies hanging out.
Yeah.
That's a completely different situation. Then suddenly you're more professional world, whether it's you're out there for your internship or you're out there in class now, so even high school students who go out for interviews, for example, that's another thing, is a big issue.
What is some key advice that you can give to the younger generation that has gone through Zoom meetings for 3 years on COVID? Now they're being asked to go to networking events, present themselves, give an elevator pitch that's 1 minute long, go up to somebody, introduce yourself for 30 seconds. What is some key advice that you can give to them so they can practice that skill?
Well, the key part you just said is practicing.
Yeah.
I think there are two aspects to that. Speaking again about the audience, right? Whatever your pitch is, you also have to think about who are you giving it to, because
Yeah.
it's not all about yourself. That's the key about the pitch. So what is it that you do? How can you fulfill potentially that need? And so a pitch is always, we think of, well, I'm telling everybody in 30 seconds or in something what I can do. That's great, but you don't even know if that person needs you like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always think that it's better to be able to engage initially through a question and answer situation, because if you find a good way to engage, you have much more attention.
Yeah.
So asking questions is actually really good, but asking questions strategically uh, is a challenge. But when you know how to do that so that you can get more information out, that's a benefit. And it shows that you're curious about that person or the job or whatever, and you want to know. One of the key things I tell all my students, I tell anybody, any young person, do not be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That shows that you're interested.
Yeah.
Even if you don't, it doesn't make you look stupid. Everybody thinks it makes you look stupid. It does not make you look stupid. It shows curiosity and interest. That's key.
So if somebody comes to you and wants help to prepare for a TED talk or some kind of big talk for a big audience in a big company, what kind of process is it that you will take them through? And for example, a man, he's not comfortable speaking in a large crowd and he's being asked to give a keynote presentation for the leadership team in his company. What kind of process will you take him through?
I start with me understanding first. So it will be, what company is it? What is your position? Who will be in that leadership audience? What is your specialty that you're going to be talking about? What are the issues that you believe the audience needs to hear, that they are not aware of, that they're interested about? Okay, once we have that, those are key questions. And once we have that established, that takes a little bit of, understanding. And I'm very good at learning extraordinarily fast because I've worked for so many different companies that I can get to the essence of things very quickly. I get what the key is. Even if it's complicated, I can make it simple and
Yeah.
bring that. So once I understand that, then we start working about, because that person will have to have at least already an idea of what he wants to talk about. And what happens a lot of times when somebody is uncomfortable, they will talk a lot, and they will like to sound eloquent. Eloquent, however, means that those are longer sentences, and something for an audience when you speak should not be longer sentences.
Yeah.
We as human beings are wired to listen and to tell stories. So I will try to find where the stories within the information can be, and then try to bring in stories.
Yeah.
So because we as human beings, before we had books that we could write down, before we had hieroglyphs that we could engrave, we our history was told through storytelling. That's
Yeah.
it. And that is what
Yeah.
we need to have, right? That is what the key is in terms of when you want to have an audience's attention. The moment I tell you a story, like I did in the beginning, going to the Emmys or the
Yeah.
challenges, story, people listen to that.
And speaking about that, we spoke about a story we could open up with, because you wanted to mention your dog, and then I mentioned I went to a TED Talk in Montclair last week, and I really remember one of the talks. She came up, she wanted to talk about project management, and she introduced herself by mentioning her dog, and she showed a photo of her dog, and I just remember in that second, I was like on. I listened to her, and I thought like project management is pretty dry, but she kept me on because she started with something about emotion, about a dog, and I could feel it in the whole room. Like people just like, what is that? So, do you have more such kind of tricks or good ways to kind of um, focus on that storytelling and that emotion to get people to listen?
You have to understand how the human brain works. We can only focus for a certain amount of time. And when we say today's attention span has gotten shorter, yes, it has. But even with that, not so much. The maximum amount of time normally is 7 minutes or so that you really pay attention, but we go in and out like this. And if we're not engaged, we tune out faster. And sometimes it's not really, I may look at you and but maybe suddenly I'm thinking, oh, I don't think I locked my door. I mean, that thought may just come
Yeah,
randomly. And at that moment that I'm thinking that, I am clearly not going to be listening to
yeah,
you at that time.
yeah,
And we have to take ourselves away from the thought that an audience listens to you all the time. It doesn't. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So the
yeah,
story is because if I tell you a story, you know what? I mean, just earlier today, I was in the forest and my dog, because I have one too, suddenly ran away. And you know why? He found some kind of animal, at least the hole. And then he started digging in that hole and he was going crazy. And this entire time you're listening very nicely, aren't you? Because it's
yeah,
visual, it's a story, it's makes it exciting. Oh my God, what's happening? He
yeah,
never found the animal, but he was certainly digging in the heat.
yeah,
And there, so there, if I have, even if let's say about cancer research or something, right? Some new development. Um, People will pack that full of statistics and information. Okay, we can only absorb so much. But if I now say, and let me give you an example about what this means. We have found that with this new development, a woman who before would have cervical cancer because there's a history in her life, if she's found this, even this, imagine a mother, two kids, they're about in school, and she's diagnosed with cancer. What does that mean to her? She thinks it's a death sentence. But now, with this new development, we are giving her a chance of a real long life. All right, that even if you weren't paying attention to what exactly the development was before, now you want to know, what was that again? Oh, shoot, I missed that part.
Yeah. And also, when you spoke about your dog, I also noticed that you kind of moved in, and that really grabbed my attention. So I want to talk a little bit about the different modalities that people respond to. For example, I'm very visual. I respond to images, think and perform in images. Some people are better at audio. Some people are better at like touch and like the more physical aspects. Can you tell our audience a little bit about how to speak to people with different modalities, because we all have different ways to be reached in the most efficient way? How do you, if you speak to a room with 100 people, they probably all have different key modalities that works best for them. How do you capture an entire audience?
Well, you have to think about the difference is like in television or the theater, for example. When you have the television is actually a very intimate way of communicating because the camera is always so close. And I'm saying television, but on, the camera is always so close that I just need to do, and you get it. If nobody would see in a big room. So in a big room, I'll have to do, right? So you have to adjust that way. But if I did that big gesture on TV, it would look, well, that's a bit overdone, right? So I think that is one thing. The other one is truly the challenge is truly to own the room, and that the bigger the room, the more people are scared of it. It's easier to talk to 2 or 10, but then suddenly you have 100, or you have to be comfortable in that, and that takes practice. I mean, it really does, and nobody's going to be right there, bada bing, bada boom, standing on a big stage and going, yeah, I got it. But one of the key other key elements I always mention is, and I like this, you have to be your own symphony orchestra, because you have voice, you have your eyes, you have your head movements, you have your arm movements, you have your body movements, right? And how you use your voice is also so crucial. Is it gentle? Is it loud? You have to find the moments where you have to, my God, that is ridiculous. Or, it's so sweet. That has to come across. You have to use it, because it's, there's a song, Johnny One Note. Da, 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 na, 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 na. Okay, how long are you going to listen to that? So if somebody just speaks like that, you're going to tune out in 5 seconds. And so you need to put it all together to create that symphony orchestra.
It's very interesting. It's also interesting for me, I think, that people are more scared of speaking in a room of 100 people than they are in speaking in front of YouTube that can have potentially 8 billion people. Do you know why we are more afraid of people in a room than people that we can't see?
That's why.
Because we can see them? Because we can't see them?
Before Zoom became so ubiquitous, I was coaching people to speak for the camera, because there's also a difference in terms of, are you speaking for the camera to be, for example, for a film for a company, right? Then you have a team normally around you, you have lights, it's all, and then they're nervous. You do an interview, so you have to speak well, because you don't know how your sentences are going to come across. Zoom somehow eliminated part of that whole aspect, and because you look at the camera, but you do not see the reaction unless now, okay, I see you, but overall that's not the big thing. But if you're in a room, you feel the people. That's different.
Yeah, because we pick it up with our body and our emotions, and you could sense, and you could Oh, there, yeah,
You will
yeah,
feel when you lose your audience in a room. That's the thing. And
yeah,
so then you get nervous, and of course you're going to lose them even more.
yeah,
If you don't know
yeah,
like how to pick it up and to bring them back. I have
yeah.
to.
Well,
I want to do this little something with you as an
yeah,
example of how important just even intonation is. Okay, a very short sentence, 6 words. He never said he loved her. Okay, that's a sentence. He never said he loved her. Now we're going to do this alternating. Um, he never said he loved her. I will start saying it where I put the emphasis on the first word. Then you go and you put the emphasis on the second word. I go back, I put the emphasis on the third, and back like that we bounce. Okay?
okay, okay,
All right. And then we'll see what you notice. Okay, ready?
yeah.
So, stress on the first word is I never said he loved her.
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 Right.
Yeah,
And you went to the last one, and in between it is I never said he loved her, and then that last one and the other stress would be I never said he loved her.
yeah,
And you see how what happened here is it's one short sentence, 6 words, 6 different meanings depending on where you put the emphasis. And that's the power.
I think that was a very fascinating example, and that also brings me to think about text messaging, because you could send that in a text and there's no tone. You send it in an email, there's no tone. If you don't use emojis, it can mean all of those things. So again, so do you have some advice in terms of written communication to avoid getting into a situation where it's being completely misunderstood?
There's so much miscommunication in texting.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I always say if you go back and forth 3 times and it doesn't seem clear, pick up the phone and call,
yeah,
because you will avoid something more dramatic. Because in the phone call, within literally probably just a minute, you're going to
yeah,
solve whatever the misunderstanding was. But instead, most people keep texting back and forth to try and solve it. But
yeah,
each time, the interpretation is by that other person who already had maybe misunderstood it. So
yeah,
it doesn't help when you write even more. You'd have to write a longer explanation. That's the only way. When you suddenly, if potentially you recognize, ooh, they took it this way,
yeah.
but then it's not, I didn't mean it like that. Then it has to be, I'm sorry, I didn't understand exactly what you meant. I meant it this way. And now, so you have to write
Yeah.
longer in order to avoid that. You do that faster if you actually
Yeah,
call.
yeah. That's my experience as well. That sometimes it just like 2 minutes phone call can solve, like can save like hours of texting for sure. Um, so I want to speak a little bit about you from Germany. You moved to the US. Do you see some key differences in those two cultures during the years that you've been here?
I always did. Germans are a lot more straightforward, and I mean that's their reputation, but it is also the truth. Americans are very polite in their initial conversations. The pleases, the thank you, which makes it very nice and engaging for somebody from Germany actually because that friendliness is very
Yeah,
engaging. Um, Germans also, I think it's changing now, but it's much more hierarchical still, even though that is changing. But in America, teamwork is a very important aspect, always has been. And so the idea I learned from a friend of mine that in America you are looked at as a leader, and if you recommend somebody, or if you say I know this person or I'm working with this person, rather than taking it yourself and saying, well, my team, right? And then you have 3 people working for you who do that.
Yeah.
But which in Germany, you would oftentimes just say, yeah, we get it done. I'm taking care of that. But you have the 3 people doing that. Whereas in America, you'd say, absolutely, we got it done. John and Melissa and Lisa they're great, and I love working with them and all of that. That makes you not less competent looking, but rather, oh wow, okay, great.
Okay.
You're acknowledging the team and you're also working with that. So that I found very, very interesting. It took me a little bit of time to get away from understanding that, even though I really like that aspect of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And because I have mentored, actually on Raising Liberty Square, we had a young Miami producer who literally, we were working with him, but he was learning from me. And he said, you're the first person who believed in me, and you have raised me up to a level I never imagined I could achieve. And partially it was because there was my Germanness, right? I was never afraid to tell him, look, Ron, doesn't work this way. You can't do that. There's responsibility. You need that. And nobody had held him to that kind of accountability before. But at the same time, and he couldn't escape it. He goes, man, sometimes I didn't, but yes, you need straight talk. So this is my students too. They are always shocked because I think I'm already being very American nice, but I still tell them, honest, constructive feedback. You can only learn from honest, constructive feedback. You cannot learn if somebody tells you always you're great. What are you going to learn?
Yeah.
I'm great. Okay, how are you going to improve is if I tell you that was not bad. Okay, this is how you can do it better.
Yeah.
And so, I think that is still there. So there's very much still that German honest, I don't do too much BS. I just want to help people. And that's the real thing. I want to make you the best that you can be, whoever you are, in whatever capacity.
Do you find that your students did they appreciate your being frank with them, or is it a bit of a shock to begin with?
I think you can ask them, but for every single one of them, it's a shock in the beginning because they've never had anything like that. That is so straight, no. Okay. And I have sometimes in my semester feedback, I always get, geez, very honest, but it's very good because now I understand, and it cracks me up because I think I'm already so nice. But yes, I am honest. If that doesn't work, then I tell you why it doesn't work, because how are you going to do it better? I had one student at feedback 2 years ago, and the first sentence was, Professor Sager is hardcore. And I'm thinking, oh God, what is going to be the rest of this student evaluation? And the rest was, and that's really good. I didn't think I would say that, but I learned more from her than I've learned from anybody else. So.
Amazing. Nice.
Yeah.
That leads me to this new tool that a lot of us are dealing with on a daily basis that, in my book, I think it's overly polite and overly nice. It always says yes to everything. Yes, I have done that. Yes, I've done that. And then I tell AI, which I'm talking about, no, you have not done it. Like, I think it's almost programmed to be overly nice and super polite and super nice. How do you use AI, if you use AI?
I think in communication, AI can be very useful. For example, if you have to write a pitch, you can bring in information and try to help phrase it. I think you need to always understand it's a machine, and that you need to bring your own personality into it in one way or another. Never accept what it gives you as face value, even though it's overwhelmingly amazing when you in 1 second get a whole page full of information. But for the human brain, it's also a lot to take in. We don't take that in that fast. We can't. That's not what we are programmed for. But we can analyze very differently. And I think that's what we should never forget, that it's there. Look at it now and see, is this really you? Don't take it as face value. And I know, for example, my students are writing speeches, with AI for sure.
Yeah.
But then you still have to give it, and that's the part. Then it's suddenly live, and that's why it's so important that whatever in terms of writing or communication, that it still reflects you, and that you can only do by reading through the 50,000 words it gives you with one prompt, and figure
Yeah.
out, "Oh, this is too much, I don't get this part." And what I do with my AI, I always there's something that strikes me always in one way quickly. I don't read through the whole thing, but and I almost challenge it back because
Yeah.
of something I do not understand or that I notice that's not right. And I think too many people don't do that. And it is an assistant to you, but it should
Yeah.
reflect you.
What kind of clients is the ideal client for you to work with? So who can you help in your communication coach practice?
Even individuals and relationships in a way, because communication is a
Okay.
big issue in relationships as well, but mostly, oh yeah, I mean, I also have a master's degree in counseling, so, and I
Yeah.
did that on purpose because I wanted to be able to go deeper into any understanding, whether I coach an executive or a student.
Yeah. Yeah.
But who can benefit is very simply anybody who is an executive who needs to give a presentation, anybody who wants to get into a leadership role, who's leading teams. Team communication is a crucial aspect, and even small business people, because most of the time they have to speak to clients or actually pitch their
Yeah.
business in a way or another, even if they are just doing at a chamber of commerce event or something, right? And how do you do it so efficiently that people come up to you afterwards and say, "I want to talk to you"?
Okay.
But Marco, the thing you mentioned this earlier, what has recently come to my attention is a few people have told me about their kids and said, "Well, I think interesting what you're saying, because my son or my daughter is now, getting ready to go out of high school and applying for college or having job interviews, and they're not understanding. They're not there in that world, and to get into that, they could definitely use help." So it's something I hadn't really considered, but now it's one thing I want to offer more. I actually have talked to a person at Succeed Together, the director of Succeed
Okay.
Together, which is an organization here in Montclair that helps after school some kids, and I'm going to do an enrichment program for them.
I could speak to you for hours about communication and how people can improve that. But I want to ask you, is there something that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about here on this podcast?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe maybe that I just hope that in the future we remember that humans are still human, and that we should be there for each other and support each other wherever we can. I think we are living in a world right now that looks kind of very dark,
Yeah.
and that. But in the end, I was just talking about this today on the walk with my dog. It would be nice if we could just remember that, ev- except for those who do us harm, everybody is another human being who really only tries to do the best they can for themselves and their families and their children and their jobs, and we should cherish that. I think overall we might go through some dark ages right now, but their AI is not going to be helping us to get through it. I think we need to have a lot more human connections. It's one of the things why I want to do also like a social mixer in the fall in Montclair. I've thought about that.
What you're saying there is key. We are all in this together. We are all humans, and yeah, it comes from communication. We need to learn to communicate.
People have
From
to
yeah.
ask me, people have asked me, "Oh, you do coaching for and everybody's using AI now." And my very strong belief is that exactly because there's so much AI now, humans need to meet. Humans need to meet. They have to speak to each other. They have to learn to speak to each other again, for real. And they have to learn to communicate. The AI can do a lot of things, but it doesn't help the human soul. And that's what we need. And only one people do that.
Yeah. I think it's a very good point. And Corinna Sager, really appreciate your time here. I think you have some very good insights that a lot of people can benefit from. So where can people find you and contact you if they want to hear more about you or even work with you?
I have a wonderful website that's very simply my name, corinnasager.com. For those of you who might also feel that they are not being understood, Be Understood is another, beunderstood.live is another one.
Yeah.
And, just contact me through there.
Great. And I'm going to put all of your notes in the show notes. And Corinna, thank you so much for a great podcast. And I know you're heading out to Germany soon, so have a safe flight, and I will see you back in Montclair. Thank you so much, Corinna.
Thanks, Marco. Great talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.